the last mile, right? It's like there's like a 40, maybe like 50-degree slope, and it's called the pipeline. And it just goes straight up like this, And that's like the last stretch, and I'll be honest, you're sitting at the bottom of this parabola, right? And you're just I want to give up,
Yeah.
Like I really want to give up because at a certain point you kind of have to start digging your hands in to like climb up this slope.
1, 2, 3. Pro Friction!
All right, welcome everybody to the Pro Friction podcast. The purpose of the podcast is to highlight stories of friction and how people have overcome that in their own lives. Our first guest is Michael Tan, who graduated from UCLA in 2022, studying philosophy and public policy. He worked as a project manager for a tech company and has recently made the career shift to becoming a firefighter for the Los Angeles Fire Department, or LAFD. We're obviously fascinated by his life journey thus far and hoping to unpack more of this mindset in this episode. So without further ado, welcome, Michael.
Hi, everyone. It's truly a privilege and an honor to really shed some insight or just share a bit about what we've all gone through and in that place that I hope whoever listens is able to receive something from it.
Well, welcome, Michael. We're excited to have you. I know Jackie just introduced you, but yeah, I'm excited to see you as well. I guess to start it off, we all know you from Run Club. At least me and Jackie, we know you from Run Club. And talking to you 2 days ago, you shared that you drive actually pretty far to get over. We're all the way in Walnut, and you're in deep LA. So why do you come out so far to come join us every Saturday?
I think initially I was invited out by a friend that attends this run club, and I also saw this opportunity as an opportunity to put in more work, an opportunity to just get more training in. But I think as the weeks have gone and as I've met more people, I'm able to just see the hearts behind why people want to pursue running in this club. And in a similar sense, it's we're cut from a similar cloth. I hear Jasper just sharing 2 weeks ago saying that, it's such a privilege to run with people when I used to train by myself. And I was like, oh man, that really struck my heart. So to be surrounded with people like that, I want to continue walking and running alongside these type of people.
Yeah, because I think I was shocked when Jasper told me that you drive from downtown LA. I was like, yo, I mean, I hope it's worth it. But I mean, I think we're growing a real community, and sometimes only maybe 4 or 5 people show up, but at the end of the day, as long as the core members are consistent, that's ultimately how you start growing the community. And to see you come out, I think it inspires a lot of people as well. So I think we're all just yo, Michael's a beast. Because I know you do daily fitness training too. I know we talked a little bit about that. So why don't we also get into your life as a firefighter? What's the daily regimen? What's the training look like? I mean, I think Steve and I don't know too much about that space.
Yeah, so currently for me, I'm actually not even in the department yet, but I'm serving as a Wildland firefighter under LAFD, and it's a crew that's staffed completely full of volunteers. So for me, I'm trying to get in there, right? And in that place, when it comes to PT, any type of work that we do, it's a lot of hiking, it's a lot of running. We put on 40, 50 pounds on our packs, and we hike up 3-4 miles for at least 1,500 elevation. And the thing is, in order to, before we even get to the fire, sometimes we gotta hike to the place to get to the fire. So it's a lot of conditioning, it's a lot of relearning what it means to be fit. And it's this idea that just because you may look fit doesn't necessarily translate to being functionally fit. So being able to be growing your stamina, your capacity to endure is something that's been very new to me and very humbling to me. But I don't regret any of it. But yeah, the daily, when I'm at the station, I wake up at 4 because the station's in the valley, so it takes me an hour to get there. So I start heading out at 5, get to the station at 6. Before even the shift starts, we start checking equipment, going through our rigs, going through our packs, making sure that everything's packed so that when we do get a call, whenever we get a call, we can just like load into the rig and go. And after that, we always do a lineup. We debrief about, weather conditions. It's really learning just like, how wind is, how wind will affect today, how the brush is looking, like the humidity in the air, all these factors that I never even considered in my life, and how that could easily spark up a fire and could lead to someone's like worst day. So, the preparation begins even the day before, like hydrating, being attentive to what you even consume, and that will bleed into how you function the next day when we're staffed.
Yeah, and just to go deeper into like the training, and how you mentioned about like functional fitness and what it takes to even get that. Were you always like growing up? Were you a person that like was a very fit person? Did you do a lot of sports or like I don't know, like what's your background in the fitness world?
Yeah, growing up, ball was life. That's what I lived by since 6th grade, and yeah, I guess I was always in a place where I would always try to be active. But I think once I went into college and I was like, okay, I'm hanging up these boots. I'm no longer in high school. I no longer take it, as seriously as I did previously. And I think that may have, and that bled into just more like aesthetic type of work. And, I think a year ago I would walk to the sandwich shop and there's like an incline. And I come back from that and I'd be huffing and puffing. I was like, this needs to change. Like I am out of shape, like these muscles do nothing, Yeah.
How did you make that transition? When did you actually start training to get fit? And when did you actually learn about like functionally fit versus aesthetically fit?
Yeah, I started learning about that, I think, sometime around December, this like past year. And I was going through these college courses because, I guess an important factor in your resume would be to have like a fire academy under you at a college, or, if you're lucky enough, you do get into like the department's fire academy. But if it's not the case, then you go through like a college. And one of the courses we had is like a pre-academy boot camp. So for roughly 2-3 months, we go through just what it means to be functionally fit. And yeah, those first 2 weeks, you get presented with just a fitness test. And, it does look rather easy, but you'd be surprised when you're climbing those like 4 flights of stairs with the 60-pound hose pack, wearing your like turnout coats and everything, how gassed you actually get. And I'm just like, yo, man, like this, nothing prepared me for this. No leg extension prepared me for this. Like no bicep curls. Like I didn't use biceps at all. We're pulling this ladder down, and it's all grip strength, and I'm just like, these like the ladder's slipping out of my hands, and I look like I'm in shambles. So I'm like, okay, like I need to learn what it means to actually be fit, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so true. Like, I mean, I think people train for different reasons, right? There's like bodybuilding where it's purely aesthetic, but maybe functionally, like if maybe in combat or maybe on like as a first responder, those maybe like those movements don't translate to like good mobility, good endurance, good stamina. But I think as a firefighter, you start to put together more well-rounded. But maybe like aesthetically, you might not look as cut, but I think functionally, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, there's some dudes that like look like they don't work out, but man, they just don't stop. They're just hiking up that mountain like nothing changed, and I'm huffing in the back. I remember one time I was on a hike like in the beginning, and I think one of my squad leaders was like, "You're skinny for no reason," and I was like, "Shoot, you're right, because clearly like everyone's doing better than I am, I'm like holding on for dear life here." Yeah, so. Something
we talked about that I wanna get into in this podcast is You said that you started training kind of in May. Like that's when you really started picking up your mileage. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like what was going on in May, and like how what kind of progress have you made since then?
Yeah, so in May was when we first we went from the testing phase into just field training for the crew. And it was definitely a rude awakening. I went into training as if I was going to be a firefighter in like a building. So when it comes to like doing structured fires, right? It's more so a marathon more so a sprint than it is a marathon. But when it comes to like wildland, that type of like firefighting, it's more so a marathon. So I would train as if like these hit workouts for these short bursts of intensity, right? And I guess I didn't do the proper preparation to really know, what it entailed. So I came in thinking like, oh yeah, I've been pushing these sleds for like 30 minutes at a time, like putting like 3-4 plates on that sled, and like, oh, that's me pulling hose, and thinking that I was like prepared, like, oh, strengthening my shoulders so that I could lift these ladders. When you do wildland, you don't necessarily lift ladders at all, really, right? You're hiking and you're digging and you're cutting the grass to like mineral soil so the fire doesn't catch over. So it's definitely a rude awakening for me, and I remember more so than what I can receive from this opportunity to like work alongside a department. I recognize that, man, I just want to earn this shirt now. Like I want to do justice to the people that have worn this shirt before me. Like saying LAFD Crew 3, like that in itself is like a privilege and an honor. And I remember our squad leader had a talk about this idea that you die before you get on the day that you staff, that you put in the work so that when you come into the station you can start working. And I'll be honest, I wasn't in the best physical shape, and I knew that I wouldn't say it's directed to me, right? It's directed to the crew, but for me, I felt convicted to be like, okay, like this has to change, because the manner in which I am able to even function on those days that we staff, like it impacts everybody else. If I fall out of line, if I am struggling, like they have to come back and get me, and I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to hold my crew back. I want to be a representation of the work that they put in. So ever since that like team meeting that we had, I was confronted with the moment. Either I accept my place and I accept that, oh, it's okay that the crew sees me this way, or you know what, this dread that I feel when I go into station, like I'll just endure it, or instead I fix the problem. I make the effort to put out for my team. And sometimes like that wall to climb so that you can put out for your team seems so high. It seems at times very impossible, and it'd be much easier to just give in. But I think as the weeks have gone on, I've come to the realization that more than wanting to surrender this opportunity, I would rather have it taken out of my hands. I would rather them tell me like, you're not cut out for this, like you're done, than me just pressing that button and being like, this is where it ends. Because if I do that, right, then that means the intentions I had going into this, my intentions when it came to, I want to serve the people, I want to serve the community, like they're no longer as pure as they were. It was just the idea that was appealing as opposed to a true desire that I had. So ever since May, I've been running, hiking every day, or trying to, at least, and incorporating rest so that my body can recover. But I remember telling Jackie 2 days ago, I remember writing a note on August 17th, and it says, from May to August, it took me 217 miles to catch up. So people, where I'm at now, like I may be middle of the pack, maybe a little bit above middle of the pack, right? But some people started where I am right now. So it's always a reminder to me, like it took me 217 miles to just catch up, to fight off whatever dread that I felt when I came into the station, to know that, like the fruits of my labor, like they were truly fruitful. But yeah, I think over the course of these past 3 months or 4 months now that it's September, like it's been a lot of learning again. I would reach out to the people that have been on the crew longer than I have, and I'm that person that's like, oh, you want to run today? Oh, you want to go for a trail run today? You want to hike today? Like more so than how they may see me, I just wanted to earn that shirt and be a proper representation of the work that they put in before me. And yeah, I think that's been the journey, and being able to be challenged at this run club too, to push beyond what I thought I was capable of doing. I think it's through this run club that I ran my first like 10.5 miles, right? And it was at like 9-minute pace. And before, when I was doing training on my own, I was like, the 10-minute pace, like, why am I not improving, But I think it's just the fact that I may have not seen it in myself, or I didn't have people that were like gunning for it as well. So yeah, I think that's just kind of like a macro view. I may have rambled a lot, but it was like a macro view of these past 3-4 months.
I actually want to add something there because Steve and we've been doing like bike marshaling for marathons. So whenever there's an event in SoCal, like a marathon, a half marathon, even some like half-century bike races, we put on like a bike marshal jersey and we go out on our bikes and we support people in whatever capacity that we're capable of. So, for example, if anybody's cramping, we have like cramp spray for them, or if there's more serious medical injuries or medical needs, then we're allowed to call like EMT. But serving in that capacity, I feel like has taught us a lot that at least as you describe your team dynamic and as you describe your obligations to the people that you're working with, I learned an important lesson recently. So it's like, they call it like a double century bike ride coming up. So it's like 200 miles. And they're looking for people to support and pace those riders for that race. Because there's a lot of people that maybe it's their first time doing like 200 miles or their experience, there's just different levels. So they're trying to recruit people to pace those riders and those participants. And our manager or the guy that's kind of leading the whole program, he's looking for people who are stronger than the mileage. So if you can barely do 60 miles, then and you're signing up for that 60-mile pace, then this event isn't for you. You have to be stronger than the mileage that you're signing up for. And so as you talk about, your duty as a firefighter, right? You can't just be like barely able to survive that job or that day. You have to be stronger than it because you might need to support someone else, or more often than not, you will have to support someone else. So the purpose and the intent when it comes to training is so much deeper because you know that you don't have to just carry your own weight. And so your training is also, you have to think about everybody else that might have to lean on you. I think like adding that extra motivation and extra purpose, I feel like makes your training so much more intentional.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And it's just this idea that like, what does it mean to serve others and being able to uplift others as well as you're going through it, so that you it's not always the case that you can do things on your own. I think that's more often than not the case that you can't do things on your own. So, dang.
Yeah, something I want to actually touch on and expand with your story is you talk about this purity of intention. And I think that that's a very deep concept because not only applies to your role as a firefighter, but in terms of anything, right? If you pursue a career, like what was your initial intent when you were doing it? Was it because you wanted to help people? Was it because you wanted to buy a house or you wanted to help your mom or something? How did you essentially realize that intentions have, because you're implying that there's impure intents. So how did you essentially learn to to delineate between those two?
I think when it comes to intentions and whether it's pure or not, I don't want to say that impure intentions are a bad thing. I don't want people to think like, oh, because I'm uncertain, so how clear my intention is that, I should question everything I do. But I think that you'll really find the weight of your convictions and the weight of your intentions when they're tested. So when you're presented with that crossroads moment where you can just say, you know what, like I'm willing to surrender this, or on the flip side of it, like I'd rather have this taken out of my hand, and I may wrestle with that on the daily, like I may wrestle with this like every hour, like that someone could just take this away from me, right? But like because like the potentiality of it being successful and potentiality of being able to just maybe even serve in the way that you would want to, like that trumps this obstacle that's before you. I think I remember I was watching like these like YouTube shorts just to hype myself up too, and I was like trying to climb this wall, right? Because I was like, dude, man, putting in this miles. Like I remember the first like 4 days I was running. Like after that talk, I'll be honest, I took a day off just to like dwell and being like, man, do I try? With the uncertainty of it not working out, like do I still try? But I remember watching this YouTube short about like a Navy SEAL, and he was talking about how did he got through Hell Week, right? And instead of just taking things day by day, he took things like block by block now. So every day he would be like, okay, I just need to make it to breakfast. After breakfast, I just need to make it to lunch, because I know at lunch I'll have like a little bit of a break. After lunch, I just need to make it to dinner. And then from a dinner, I just need to make it to my bed. And I'm like, and that's how I approached the day when I was in like not in the best shape. I was just like, yeah, I get to the station, I just need to make it through PT. And after PT, I just need to make it to like 2 for lunch. And after 2 for lunch, I just make it to like whenever my shift ends. But yeah, I think when it comes to, the purity of your intentions, I think it becomes very clear to you when it's tested, when you have the choice, and it's even more appealing for you to give it up. But you recognize that more than anything that you want, that like more than this like moment of relief that you may have, that when you get across that bridge, when you climb that wall, that's more than worth it. And I think, yeah, I think for me, like we have this hike called Pipeline, and it's like I think 4 miles in total, but the last mile, right? It's like there's like a 40, maybe like 50-degree slope, and it's called the Pipeline, and it just goes straight up like this, and that's like the last stretch, and I'll be honest, you're sitting at the bottom of this parabola, right? And you're just like I want to give up,
Yeah.
Like I really want to give up, because at a certain point you kind of have to start digging your hands in to like climb up this slope. But then, yeah, it's just like, I'm gonna be stuck here at the bottom of this hill, or I climb up and hopefully, like maybe like they'll tell me like this isn't cut out for you, but at least like I could go out on my shield. So yeah, I think your intentions will be tested. Yeah.
I remember from the intro, like you did philosophy and public policy, and worked as a project manager in tech to start off your career. What was the reason why you wanted to pursue firefighting? Because it is such a big jump. It's almost a 180. What made you want to pursue that?
Yeah, I think for myself, it's something I've always like built upon even now. Like why I want to do the things that I do. But I think initially, I remember in high school actually, I would I guess my aunt wasn't always in the best place mentally, and there were instances where we had to just call for additional help, and it would always be the fire service that would show up. And my family, like I'm like a first generation kid, so my parents don't necessarily understand English. So when we do like encounter a situation where we don't necessarily know how to respond to, it could be very like frantic. There could be a lot of stress. So when we do like call for additional help, right? When the fire service would show up, there was, at least for me personally, there was like a feeling of peace. There was a feeling of like, they like know what they're doing. Like, I don't know what words to say, how to act, but I know that like that my aunt will be taken care of, and I can just imagine like the fulfillment that you may receive from being able to, like, just as they were there for like my family, like how I can be there for even people that don't necessarily have a history with the fire service. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe like it's like how like my family grew up, but we never really wanted to ask for help. We never really enjoyed phoning like 911. Like that's like the forbidden number, and just be able to like build up that trust that people may have in the fire service. Like I was like, man, I want to be able to be there for someone at their worst day, and provide just a little bit of relief in that moment, a little bit of peace, and I think that like I could look back to my life and be like, I'm glad I was able to do that. I know I was talking with Jackie like 2 days ago, and even the week before, but it's just this idea that we're marked by the things that we do, not marked by the things that we have. And when I look at end of my time, in this world, whenever that is the case, like I want it to be just filled with stories of how people were able to be there for me and how I was able to be there for them, because that's truly the only things that I'll carry with me, or they'll carry of me. And yeah, I think for me it's just having an encounter with the fire service and seeing like the presence alone. I don't remember what they did, but I just knew that I felt that like everything was going to be okay, and being able to do that for somebody else, like I think that is that would be a joy. I would want to be able to experience that, yeah.
That's a beautiful story, and I think like when we go back to that intent right at the very beginning, and I feel like sometimes when you hit those lows, right, you remember that younger version of you that wanted to provide that sense of stability, that it wasn't about you. At the end of the day, it was about becoming strong enough so that you can be there for others. I feel like that why, it's an extra fuel for getting through your day to day. So you had that experience in high school, right? But then you in college, right? You studied philosophy, you studied public policy, and then there was kind of a buffer time before that conviction actually played a role in making that shift eventually to firefighting. So talk about like what happened in between, right? Like in college, and then like why did you go into tech to begin with?
Yeah, I think when it came to just college, typically, especially when you grow up in, like, at least for me, I was in a low-income family, so the desire for college is like, oh, we're trying to make it out of here. We're trying to change the course of our life, So going into college, it was just, what is the job that will provide the most security? What is the job that will provide the most stability? So when it came to even just like, and there's elements of just having like a parent's approval. I went to philosophy, I went to political science, and when they would ask me what I want to do with that, my like automated response would be, I want to go to law school. That's typically like the route, unless you want to pursue higher education and like further education, you want to be like in academia and stuff. But other than that, like it's like, oh, like to go to law school. So I think that buffer time was me trying to maybe not necessarily like live for my own purpose, but may be living for like what I thought my parents would want for me, right? Or want for them. I think there's always that story of just, wanting to pay back your parents and always wanting to, for me personally, it's like I hope that when they see me, they could say that the sacrifices I made were worth it, So it was a lot of wrestling with that. And so in that period of time, I definitely pursued things that may not necessarily have really been fulfilling to me, but I think it was like, I'm gonna give like this type of work a shot and see where I go from there. But it's always in the back of my head. I remember after I graduated college, like when you there's that period where you don't have a job and you start looking for anything and everything. And I was looking at like the LEFD page or any other firefighter page, and I was just like, I'd probably do that, And then I asked my dad, and I remember my dad saying like that's probably that's more dangerous than being a police officer. And I was like, really? Like, are you sure? Because I'm trying to if I was a police officer, I'm trying to dodge bullets, But if I'm a firefighter, I'm trying to dodge fires. But I really did look into it, and there definitely is an element. There definitely is danger in the fire service, and your exposure to carcinogens and this, that, and the fourth. So I don't think he was wrong in that. But he told me give it a year, give it a year and a half, and revisit it. So in that time, I kind of set it aside, laid it down, and when you get wrapped up in a new job too, you want to be able to just focus on that job and be a good worker and really not get fired. So in that time, I think it really left my mind, and so when things started getting into just routine, it gave me more time to really think do I see myself doing this? Is this the type of impact I want to have on those around me? What will I be marked by? What do I find my identities in? So I think once that year and a half passed, I gave myself more time to just really introspect on that, and then while having a job, I just was okay, I'm going to EMT school now. And they're like, what are you talking about? Going to EMT school. And it's in that place that you firmly just go for it, and your parents even recognize that, that's something they want to do, and what I can say won't stop them. So the best I can do is support them in that, But yeah, that was that buffer time in between, just wrestling with a lot of what it means to how to be a good son, what it looks like to pay back my parents, what the world thinks may be the appropriate thing to do, and the more smart thing to do,
Yeah. So let's move on to what are your goals now?
Yeah.
I know that right now you're still training to get into the department, and we talked about this a little bit, but I want viewers and Steve to hear it, because I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think in terms of now, my goals are to apply to as many fire departments as I can, hopefully get into a college academy, or start that process in January. But there are other opportunities currently. So when it comes to wildland firefighting, there's different people that organizations that do run it. One's through the government, one's through Cal Fire and other things such as that. And I'll be honest, I never thought about wildland firefighting being something that I want to pursue. I know that in terms of stability, it's not necessarily as stable and as secure as going to a department, but I think for myself, I see that as another wall to overcome. When it comes to really being a wildland firefighter, if you become a hotshot, which is low key the special forces when it comes to firefighting, you would be gone for 14-day assignments, and then you'd be back for 2 days, and then off somewhere else for like a 14-day assignment. It's very intense. The physical requirements are so much more. But I think that through having this opportunity, just like being on this crew and just having a glimpse of what it may look like, and the like how I've been challenged, but in that place, how much I've grown. A part of me does want to further go along this path and see what else is there, and it could be like, oh, you know what, like my bank account may not look like as good as it could look, but I think there's so much to take away from like being a wildland firefighter out there, and so I think for now I'm still wrestling with like there's things that I can do, and there's things that I'm like, oh, do I want to do that? And yeah, so I'm definitely going to like ask my supervisor when for just his insight of how to go about things, because in this period right now there's like hiring done or like hiring getting done for like the forestry service, and one of them is like to be like either on like a crew for the forestry service, or like a wildland firefighter apprentice where I think you might be like stationed with like a hotshot crew. We'll see, but a part of me wants to see that. It's kind of like I want to say it's like a game, but I've had a glimpse of that path, and I want to finish out the path before I move on to the next path. But I'm trying to discern if that's like a pride thing, or if that's like a like is it just because like the idea of it sounds good, or is it something I really want to do? But a mentor did tell me like that feeling of dread that you have when you confront a huge wall and a near impossible wall, like as opposed to seeing that as something that's negative, see that as a signifier that you're growing. And that really shaped how I even approach these walls. Essentially he's saying like be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and from that place, right, that there'll be just so much growth. So even with these opportunities that do come up, I'm like, man, like let's I might want to climb this wall and see where I end up, because I could climb halfway, and I still climbed halfway. That's still further along than where I was when I sat at the bottom of the wall. So I do have the confidence to think like like I can't climb this wall. I don't think it's impossible. So yeah, I think I'm wrestling with just things that once again like sound like the smart thing to do, but the other thing is like, oh, but how will I get like other things that will lead to like growth in a different sense? So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at and what I'm looking towards. It's very, I don't know, maybe it sounds very vague, but yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you're like, even though I mean the juxtaposition of your bank account, but also the richness of your life experiences. I feel like I mean we're you mentioned this earlier about the run club, but I feel like we're cut from a very similar cloth in the sense of like, our pursuit is life richness, and in the process, right, if we're making a lot of money, like obviously that's no one's mad about that, but the pursuit of an enriched life through these experiences, and it seems like for you and our strategy is very similar, which is like pursue the path of most resistance. So like what's in the way will become the way, and as we experience certain walls, right, we have this curiosity, we have this like interest to climb it. And I think that as you continue to train yourself, like, if you talk to if you had the same conversation back in May, or let's just say April, right, before you actually started the grind, right, maybe that version of you might not want to climb that wall because you don't have the pain tolerance to even, or the confidence to climb walls because you've never climbed a wall before. But because you've taken the steps to overcome this first hurdle, now you realize the thrill and the genuine fulfillment that comes from like, whoa, I'm proud of myself, right? Like I know I might not be at the top of the class, I might be middle of the pack, but it's where I started from. And so now that there's another hill in front of me, another wall, right? It's vertical. Like I want to see what else I can do. Like how much further can I push myself? And I feel like as you continue to, and after you climb that wall, right? I mean, like first of all, we believe in you. We know that you will. Yeah. Once you climb that wall, you're gonna want more, right? And not only that, but you're also gonna be able to inspire other people, because everyone hits walls in their life, right? Like I mean, we're like Steve and I, we're hitting our own wall right now. So to hear your story, and even just like, you know, you haven't finished it yet, but the mindset alone, I feel like is very powerful. That, you know, I already got some quotes that I'm gonna write down after this podcast, because I like you've been saying some gems.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Steve, anything else we want to cover?
No, I think that this will be a great place to just like, I guess, conclude. But it was great to have like you as our first guest. I really do think that like you're like a great like embodiment of what pro friction is, and like, you know, like your mind, the way that you approach things, how you see obstacles. It's very in line to like what we're trying to just like highlight in this podcast. So I'm just like, I'm really glad that you were the first person, our first guest.
Yeah, thank
you, Michael.
You know, next time you guys do that Gobi Desert, you know, I'm there with you. You know, I heard Jasper talking about it. I'm like, man, money can't buy that experience. You know, that is so rich, enriching to life. You know, yeah.
Exactly. Hey, I'm gonna hold you to that. It's happening in May.
Yeah,
I'm holding you to that, and get some of like, let's try to get a few guys from the department, or you know, well, like I'm looking to get 80 to 100 people this time. So I'm saying it out loud on this podcast, you know, because as we continue to grow Pro Friction, and that's what this podcast is for too, the big reason is because we want to start growing the community and getting to speak with people like you, and in the future we're hoping to get many other interesting guests as well. We're hoping to just branch out and tap into these different communities, but also start to attract people who appreciate and who are in pursuit of the same goals and mindset. So this is just the beginning, and we have our own hill to climb. You know, it's growing the Pro Friction community, and that's our wall. So we're all just climbing together.
Yeah, I'm glad to be a part of it. You know, to see it. Yeah, because man, I think it's the community that really has been pushing me. You know, I'm glad with the people I've met, and glad that we're cut from a similar cloth. You know, even like, you know, like even for myself, like, you know, because I have like, I found faith in college, and even when it comes to like thinking about like church, right? It's like, pastors have said it, where it's like 5% pastor, 50% worship, and 80% community, you know, and it's really the community that we're able to just like pour into each other and uplift one another, and really encourage each other to challenge yourselves and chase after, you know, and have our intentions be tested. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So we'll wrap up the podcast there. Again, thank you so much, Michael, for being on this episode with us. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in.
Yeah.
All right. See ya.